small?
Let's see.
Yeah, it looks fine.
That's good. Everyone can see it? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, depending on the resolution of everyone's monitors, it looks nicely on my monitor, but I realize everyone has different sizes and resolutions, so it might look a little bit small. I think GoToMeeting should enable you to zoom, but let me know if there's something you can't see, and I'll see what I can do. Okay, so I think a good place for us to start is I'd really like to, as part of today's demonstration, just to show the out-of-the-box workflow. I think it would be really effective just to take a work order from beginning to end so you can see it all the way from the time it's created through to scheduled, time collected against it, and built. But before we do that, if we take a look at some of the portals, I've created just a couple of examples for us to look at today. This is more of an internal work order portal as an example, where perhaps I can see a dashboard of my open work orders by queue. So if it's more maintenance work versus preventive maintenance or any break fix, I can display the details here on my dashboard and actually drill right down to the detail, so I can see all the data that makes up that particular component. I can also compare resources, so I can see which of our technicians or subcontractors are being dispatched the most. I can track their workload, for example, so I can see here that Gloria's been working extra hard for our business. And like I said, we can drill right down to the details of the dashboard, which is certainly a nice feature that can save some time. On the topic of customer portal, in fact, I think that for today's purpose, when we create that initial work order, I'll create it from the customer's perspective so that I can show you what it looks like when they log in and generate a work order. But this is also a basic example of what they can log into. Very simple form. They can see all their open work orders. I can create these various tabs here along the top, so I can quickly see how many of my work orders that I've created that are not yet completed, for example. I can see all of my previous work orders. So here's a tower module failure from 3 days ago. I can drill into the details. I can see really any detail that I like, or perhaps whatever detail you give them access to. And of course, we have various other portals as well. We also have a contractor portal, so think of this as something a little bit more complex, but still quite simple, where I can provide our technicians or our subcontractors with a very limited view. They can review all of the work orders that belong to them, and they can see all of their scheduled appointments. So I can simply see my appointment for today. I can log in, append my notes using this method or perhaps various other methods as well. So each one of these portals is very configurable. In fact, every one of your end users could have their own specific portal that differs from their next colleague over. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to log out from my account here, and I'm going to log in as a customer and generate our first work order. So I'm going to log in as Sprint. And you'll notice here when I log in as my customer, I'm provided with a very limited access into the system. This is what I have enabled this particular user to see. I've given them access to our knowledge base, for example, if that applies. And they can only see their work orders, and they can only review some details. In fact, if you look in the lower left-hand corner, I'm also providing them with a service report that perhaps I've generated for that customer, and they can see all of their service activities. And that is the only access to the system that we've provided here for Sprint. So let's go ahead and generate a work order. Now, if we go back to that slideshow that I'd mentioned, this is just a working example of what this work order could look like. So every customer using this might say, well, severity doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for our business. So you can remove this field. You'll notice some of them here are red, indicating that they're required fields. So I can make this form look any way I like. I can make fields required, and I can also eliminate fields that perhaps aren't appropriate for your business. So just think of this as a working example. Now I'll specify here that it's Sprint. I can identify what my bill to address is or my ship to. So if it's the primary office, but I need to do service at a different location or at a different site, I can manage that here. We have other methods as well. I can see things like incident type. So if they're requesting maintenance, for example, or if it's a break-fix type scenario, I can specify things like what the type is and what the urgency is. I'll specify who it is in the organization that's making this request, and what's my problem. Okay. In fact, if you wanted to even add each one of the towers or really any sort of piece of equipment or hardware, I can also choose to select that particular item from a drop-down, in which case I can see all the service history against it. And this is really all I need to be able to create a work order. I'll go ahead and save it. And you'll notice it creates the next available work order number in a status of entered and not yet assigned. So let's go back now to an internal user's account and see what just happened here. This is my work order screen. You'll see I'm probably showing far too many columns that are required, but as you can see, I can completely configure what each one of my columns displays. So I might have some that are more complex, I might have some that are simpler, and I can also create all these individual tabs. So I might create a tab that says, show me all of my work orders that have been entered but not yet assigned. Here's our work order here for sprint, so I'll go ahead and open this. I can see many more fields. I can see exactly when it was entered, any time that it was modified. I can see here who entered it. So if I specify who that actual user was, I can also say it was logged by Sam at Sprint. I'll review the details here of the work order. I may make some changes. I'll review this and say I'm going to head and please dispatch a service tech to site 125. I have this particular field here, my problem and my solution, which can, of course, be relabeled. But think of your problem note here as an externally facing notes field. And perhaps we have our solution notes field here, which is more of an internal notes. So if you wanted to make sure you had some notes that were independent from what your customer sees, we do support that functionality. Now, as I review this work order, depending on how complex your order management requirements are, some of our customers might have perhaps a service level agreement with the customer that says if something breaks, I might not necessarily bill on a time and materials basis. I might need to specify what that piece of equipment is that they're calling about, in which case I'll check and see what their service entitlement is. So we can use our contract component here of alert software. So if we are tracking things like service entitlements, either for the company Sprint or perhaps for an agreement that they have in place, it'll automatically notify us what their billable rates will be, and it'll also notify your business, TrueNet, how this is going to be costed. So if it's costed on a per subcontractor providing the work, or if it's on a flat fee basis. So in our case, I'm going to specify that is a time and materials engagement. And we'll go ahead and save this work order again. So at this stage, I might choose to make some notes here on my work order so I can notify the customer that, that we have now scheduled a technician or that we've received their request and we're going to schedule a resource. And the next thing we might do is take a look at our scheduler and see who's available to take on that work order. So there are a few different methods available for scheduling our resources. I can use this type of scheduler, which is more of an Outlook style scheduler. And we also have another tool set called a scheduling board, which is more of a Gantt chart style scheduler. So my first tool here is I might choose to say, show me all of my employees as well as all of my subcontractors. And let's go ahead and display this either by office, in which case it'll separate all of my staff by their appropriate office or territory, for example. I can also say, well, let's specify by job role. So in this case, I might say, show me all of my subcontractors based in, for this example, out of my New York territory. Show me all of my field engineers that are perhaps available to be scheduled. So I'll pick some of these resources here, and let's see what their calendar availability is like. So now if I look at the lower half of my screen here, I'm going to say, show me a list of all of my work orders that are in a status of entered and haven't yet been assigned. What I'll do is I'll take my list here of work orders. I see our sprint work order that we just created. I can see things like their due date and time. I can also add functionality for perhaps a requested date and time if the client requests a particular day that they'd like to have their service completed. And what I can do now is if I know who the resource is that's going to be scheduled, I can see here that Nathaniel Hill is available this evening. I can simply take this work order, drag and drop it onto his calendar. You'll notice it clears it off my list, so now it moves over to my Scheduled Incidents tab. And I have now scheduled Mr. Hill for this particular appointment. Now, another common thing that could happen is if I have a number of subcontractors and we're not yet sure who's going to take on that particular job, we have a workflow functionality where before I go to my scheduling board, I might specify with my client what the day and time is that the service needs to happen. And we can create a workflow button right on the work order that says, please email the following group. And I can specify and say, show me all of my subcontractors that are certified to do servicing of towers that are based out of this particular region. And what it will do is it'll take every one of those subcontractors from our resource list in Alert Software, and it can send them an email with a predefined message. So as I do that, that can then help me with getting the email out the door, and perhaps if it's more of the taxi cab style dispatch model, the first one to email us back and confirm that that they're willing to take on the job would be the one that wins the contract. So that's certainly a very common function along some of our businesses that are using subcontractors instead of internal technicians, that you might choose to use our system to send out the email, and then the first one to accept it, we'll just simply go back to the work order, go to our Assign To field, and specify who that technician is that we've assigned to that particular work order. Now we can take it a step further as well and have another button on the work order that can notify everybody else that received that email, with the exception of the resource that won the opportunity, and let them know that the job has been given to another subcontractor. In fact, what we would do more than likely is create one of these workflow buttons here on the side of the form so we can simplify that process for your business. So while we're looking at this work order, you remember that we scheduled Nathaniel Hill to the job. You'll notice the status has now been moved to scheduled. So at any given time, you'll notice how instant the software is as well, that when we assign resources, be it technicians or subcontractors, as soon as we assign someone, the statuses of these work orders will instantaneously change. And we can create all sorts of workflow escalations. In fact, you might have seen one fire in the lower hand of my screen here, a little something like this. So as soon as we drag and drop to schedule a resource, we can have the system send out these automated messages to the subcontractors to let them know that they've just been scheduled. Here's the site they're going to. Click here to log in and review the details. Now another example, perhaps something like this, is what you might want to send your client, something a little bit friendlier looking. It's an HTML form. We can make this look any way we like. And perhaps this is another message that we might choose to send out to Sprint. And of course, that customer can log into that customer portal to also review the details further.
Greg, question for you. A lot of our larger customers have their own systems that they're passing the tickets to us. Do you have the ability to integrate with that, utilizing some sort of API, or is it strictly portal based?
Well, out of the box, Charles, it's strictly portal based. If you wanted to use the technology that's already created and ready to use today,
Okay.
it would be via the portal. If it's important to be able to use their system or have them continue using their system, it would be a customization effort. I mean, it's easy to say it's possible. I don't really yet know how what kind of labor effort there would be to do that.
Okay.
But I think you had mentioned before, Charles, it's are they using SQL based?
We have all different types of customers, so I really wouldn't even haphazard a guess, quite frankly.
That's fine.
Yeah, it's just most of them ask us whether or not we can interface at some EDI level or API level, and then you have to get into it with them.
That's right. I mean, I can also take an inbound email and generate a work order, but if they'd like to continue using another system, it would require us to integrate alert software with whatever that system is. So I would imagine that it's possible. It just depends on exactly what the requirements are, and we can spec out what the labor effort would be.
Okay. And I know Walt would want to know, can you take Excel spreadsheets where the customer has several jobs, typically installation jobs, and use that to set up jobs, or would we have to re-keystroke everything?
You wouldn't. In fact, this is especially common, Charles, for businesses, and I think much like yours, that have multiple sites. It's something I commonly see is perhaps you win a contract with one of the large mobile providers, and you need to upload a whole bunch of work orders, a whole bunch of addresses and sites. You can manually key them in here in Alert Software, or you'll notice that we do support Excel and Word. So I can take that Excel sheet and import it into the system. In fact, you'll notice here we have import functions, as well as a number of import functions here, so I can import all sorts of details. I can import contacts, companies, work orders, whatever it might be. Is that helpful, Charles? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, that's fine for right now. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. What I can always do as well is, depending on if it's very important for the clients to be able to use their existing systems, we can certainly have a subsequent call, and I can bring on one of my more technical resources, and I'm sure they can speak to the kind of effort that's required.
Okay.
Okay. So the next big piece that I'd like to walk through is we've now scheduled the resource, being the subcontractor. Now it's time to take off our hat and wear the hat of what that subcontractor will see. So this would be a good point to ask. Are there any questions before we look at receiving that appointment and collecting time and expenses? Okay. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is log in as a subcontractor user. So this is now logging into another portal that we'd seen previously, which is a technician portal, or certainly an example of a technician portal. You'll notice again that this is perhaps something that's given to a subcontractor. They're not an employee to the business, so we're only providing them with a little bit of access. They're only given each one of their scheduled items, so I can see here's that incident or that particular appointment we scheduled via the scheduler. And I can also see down below a list of every one of my work orders that belong to this particular resource. So I can see those that have been assigned to me. I can see those that have been assigned and actually scheduled in my calendar. And I can see all those that perhaps I'm still working on that have not yet been closed. So there are multiple methods for this particular resource to get his time, his notes, any parts used into the system. In fact, I believe that today we have about 4 or 5. So let's start to walk through those options. The first option is via a portal. I can log in, see all the details about the work. I can write my notes here. This would require myself to use like a tablet or a laptop in the field. I can simply click on an Enter Time button to type in my labor time in any of my notes. That would certainly be one option. And then when I'm completed the work order, I can click a button to say that I've completed the work. A second option would be to log into a timesheet. So I can see every one of the work orders or projects that have been assigned to me that I'm working on. Any of these red boxes indicating an appointment that's been scheduled but not yet complete. So if I were to find my time and materials work order here for sprint, I could also click on today's date here and enter my time. I can also add any notes and a description, and I can also enter things like my travel to time, as well as mileage if we're reimbursing or perhaps billing any mileage. Now this timesheet also supports the concept of expenses. So if your subcontractors are also collecting expenses that either need to be reimbursed or costed against the job, that is something else we could do from this timesheet. So like I said before, this timesheet would require a laptop or a tablet. One of the advantages to something like this is that I could enter time across multiple appointments very quickly and then just simply save that data. Now I'm going to try something I've never done before, and I'm hoping that it works. I'd like to show the smartphone mobility. And I'm going to see if I can connect this here with the new piece of software I got that'll hook up my iPhone to my computer.
I have a quick question. Right where you're at on the schedule, say there's a ticket or whatever that needs to be like first thing that morning, but there's like 5 listed. Will it display like the first one that needs to be taken care of, or is it just go in the queue?
Oh, it's, I mean, I can list this any way I like. Right now I have, you'll notice the arrows going down here. So it's showing me a list of all of my appointments in order. But you can certainly filter and list this detail any way you like. So if you've got multiple that are happening the same day or you want to prioritize them, I can do so quite easily.
Not saying it's like, say I schedule someone for 5 sites that day. Well, there's one site that he has to be on location at 8 o'clock to meet somebody. Will it tell you right there, or like when the 5 are listed, will it like flash say, hey, at 8 o'clock you need to be here, or will they need to go in and open up each one to find out if there's any notes?
Well, with this example, this is probably not the best example for seeing that particular scenario of yours, but what we could do is add different fields here and different notifications. Perhaps we add a colored dot that says, a red item is something that's going to happen right away that day, or, a green item is one that requires going on site. The other thing is bringing back some of these escalation notices you saw before. We can also automate the system to say if you need to be on site, say in 2 hours, you can create a workflow that says within 2 hours from the time they need to be there, please send another one of these emails as just a friendly reminder to make sure they go on site, and also provide whatever the note is about like maybe things they need to bring.
Okay.
And we also support text message, the SMS, so if you also want to, instead of sending an email, you'd like to send a text message, that would be another option as well.
And you can automate that process so that somebody receives a text message a certain number of minutes or hours ahead of time.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's just using our escalation engine. So as soon as that criteria is met, say 2 hours before appointment, perform this activity for these types of resources, it can automate that. Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm very excited about this. This is
Yay, look at that.
something new. So what I usually do is I take my browser and I just kind of shrink it down. Unfortunately, it's not actually showing the image of the iPhone here, which is Can you see an iPhone on your screen, or is it all white?
It's all white.
Oh, okay, that's too bad. It usually does show a picture of the iPhone. So if I back up for a moment, Charles, I know that you'd mentioned that it'd be very preferable if it's like a native app on the phone. So just so everyone knows, it's not actually an app today. We're looking at taking the app route as part of our next release next year. But as it stands right now, it is a website that we log into on our smartphone. But if I back up, you'll notice down here, I can save that link so it kind of appears like an app. And I'll show you some of the advantages as to why perhaps the smartphone mobility, it might actually be advantageous to use it more via web than it is via app. Okay, so this is a little bit as to what it looks like here on my iPhone. And what I can do is, you saw the example of receiving those email notifications that I've been dispatched for a particular day. I can look at my Today button, so if I click around my Today, I can see a list of all the appointments that I have for this particular day. This top one here is the work order we created together. I can see it's currently in my...
Nothing is moving right now.
Yeah, all we're seeing is your first field on the phone.
Yeah.
Oh, weird. Let's see. It should be moving. Can you see it moving on your screen right now?
Nope.
No, it's just showing the login screen.
That's unusual. No, it should be moving. The go-to meeting's on air. Maybe if I close this down. I was all excited to show you that iPhone too. Karma's gotten me on my Friday afternoon. Let me know when you can see my screen again.
We see it. It's just the original logon screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, the go-to meeting seems to have frozen.
There it is. Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
We're back online.
Yeah. Now we're seeing the iPhone with mail at the bottom, Safari messages.
Oh, weird. It's yeah, you shouldn't be seeing that at all. It's I'm quite a bit ahead of you.
Yeah. Okay. Now it popped out to timesheet detail.
Okay. And let me know when you can see my my cursor here doing.
Yeah. Yeah. We can see it. We can see it.
Okay. Well, I think what I might have to do is, I don't know if my my iPhone software here is blowing up, but perhaps I'll just go back to old faithful method and show you on a browser. Can you still see the screen okay?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. It's not nearly as pretty, but it's very similar. This is what the solution looks like on a mobile device. So what I was showing previously is I can click on, well, first and foremost, you can see that I've got all sorts of filters. So I can not only enter my time here, I can also create work orders from here or perhaps create subsequent appointments. So what I like to show is I can click on today's date and see a list of all the activities I have for that day. Now, one of the advantages to being web-based versus being application-based is when you're writing on an app, it can be very difficult if you'd like to make changes to the app. So what we're finding is we've taken a look at maybe taking the app route versus going web-based, but we find that a lot of our customers like flexibility, where perhaps when I'm entering my time or entering my notes here, you might have a different type of field that you'd like to capture in the future. So our system, we really pride ourselves on you being able to add those form fields very easily and adding workflow logic around it. It just becomes very difficult to manage when you're using apps, and it becomes even more difficult when you have multiple employees using different kinds of devices. So it would require you to go in and update it for iPhone and for Android and such as well. So this would be that particular appointment that we created via the scheduler, so I can see my maintenance request. I can add workflow buttons here on the top, which I can add on my smartphone that'll say that perhaps click here to say that I've arrived. A very common feature that our customers do is when I click on arrived, perhaps it sends a notification to a dispatcher in your office or somebody to let you know that that particular subcontractor has now arrived on site and they're currently working. When I log in here to my device, I can just simply go ahead and type in my time. I can add my notes. I can add things like mileage or travel to, travel from. I can write my solution notes. So perhaps if I skip ahead a few steps, when I write notes here at the solution level, this perhaps can display on an invoice that I send the customer. So if he goes out and says that I provided maintenance, fixed one of the modules on a tower at site 125, and seems to be working and it's been fully tested. You can write these notes and you can map this to the invoicing module so that whatever notes here get not only brought back to the work order but also implemented and shown right on the invoice. And here on our smartphones, we do also support a signature capture. So this works for both smartphones or tablets, or also a service laptop if you have any sort of service-based device like a Windows 8. And what it'll display is a small box here on the screen where I can use either my finger or a stylus, and that subcontractor can collect the signature from the customer, which then gets appended back as an attachment on the work order. So as I'm entering my details here on my smartphone, I can also go back and if I know that I need to come back on a subsequent day, I can go ahead and add a new appointment. I can type in my appropriate fields to reschedule myself, which will also notify yourselves in the office that that new appointment's been created. And if it's applicable for you folks, I can also have my smartphone in my hand and create a whole new work order if I need to. If I'm looking at the tower and saying, well, this is broken, but this other module seems to be malfunctioning too, I should probably create a work order and notify TrueNet that that you're going to have to send someone else back to fix another module. It's another function you can take on your smartphone.
Could you do that as a change order rather than a whole new work order?
Well, absolutely. It's I don't currently have that as an example here on the smartphone, but you can enable, instead of add incident, you can add change order.
Okay.
The system does support change orders. Where the nice thing with the change order is that it has a lot more out-of-the-box approval processes. Like when I first enter a change order, it's not going to be active. It's just going to sit in a draft status, awaiting approval. And then, of course, once that is approved, I can go ahead and approve it, and it'll just generate my next work order for me. Okay. Now, the last method for entering time that I'll show today, probably not applicable for subcontractors, but can be nice for people in an office. We also have a full Outlook integration. So you'll notice that we integrate with Exchange, which is how we're getting all these emails out the door. All those escalation emails. But we do also support Outlook so that perhaps if people internally are being scheduled, I can also enter my time and all of my notes here directly from within my Outlook. So I can take that appointment, I can enter my time. I've got them working late here tonight, and I can write my notes. I can even collect a signature from my Outlook and save that. Okay.
So if you don't mind, can we kind of get into the PM functionality of this thing and really kind of the real guts of what we're really looking at here?
Absolutely. Let's. So I've pretty much taken that work order beginning to end. Now it's just a matter of going back to our work order, marking it complete, and running it through a billing cycle. So when we talk on the topics of PMs, there are a number of ways to do it. I can create a manual schedule that'll say once a month I need to create X type of work order and schedule it to X group of resources or subcontractors. What we have here is within an area of our software called contracts. This is where I'll set up an agreement with a customer to do some level of preventive maintenance. So I'll type in the details of my contract. Depending on how this is being billed, some of our clients will bill for every preventive maintenance appointment, or some might just bill some annual fee, where then technically every one of those preventive maintenance appointments are not being billed. It's all billed as part of a contract. So I would specify the details of the contract. I can also serialize or itemize every one of our sites. So if I need to lift, 50 towers, 100 towers, or wherever those sites are, I can specify that here as part of our agreement. I can then go to our PM manager and type in every one of those preventive maintenance items that needs to happen. So I might create my first schedule for this particular site or tower, and I'll set up a maintenance, specifying here as my M, would be my maintenance type of appointment. This one appears to be on a quarterly basis. So I can just create my schedule that says do one maintenance appointment quarterly for whatever the span of time might be. I can also create subsequent ones here for this piece of equipment to say that we're also doing an inspection on a semi-annual basis.
Yeah, and Greg, that's interesting. That wasn't really what Walt was asking. So
Okay.
Nomenclature. So we have, I know this is primarily a dispatch system, but one of the things that we do is installations, and obviously Walt in particular is interested in the installation side, and the ability to put a work order in that has multiple tasks and to track those tasks in the system.
Just for clarification purposes, PM, is that project management?
Yeah, that's project management was what.
There we go. That was my mistake.
Yeah.
Well, while we're on the topic of preventive maintenance, that's what preventive maintenance looks like, which could be applicable for you folks.
Oh yeah, well, that's very.
I'll leave it at this topic here.
Very, very nice functionality. Wasn't what he's asking, but very nice functionality.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, my mistake. My understanding, Charles, is that some of your project requirements were not terribly complex. I thought it was a little bit more in line with work orders. So otherwise, I probably would have opened with project.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. No. And again, we've got multiple groups here, so Greg, it's difficult to do something because we know this fits Donna's group very, very well. But we're trying to see whether or not it would have applicability with our other groups. And I know Walt has some very specific things that he'd like to discuss, but it would be a small project that has multiple steps, multiple resources associated with it, and that takes place over a couple of 3 days, something like that. So.
Okay, perfect. Well, let's jump right over now to the project side of the system. So I think it'll be advantageous of us, now that we have seen what we call just work orders or incidents. Think of a work order or an incident as a very, very basic project. It's just a one-task type of engagement, where a project is certainly a lot more complex and robust. I can assign multiple resources to projects. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at my project screen here, and I'm going to take a look at one of my tower projects. So here's one for tower services, again with Sprint. And you'll notice this form, even just looking along the top here, is certainly a lot more robust than just a basic work order. The idea with projects is that these are typically longer in nature. I can take those single work orders that we've seen before, and I can also append them to projects. So what I will do is I've created a project here for Sprint. I've got my build to companies here. I've also got my ship to address, or perhaps it's being shipped to multiple sites. So think of this as just our build to, and we can add multiple ship tos to the project. Okay, I've got my estimated start dates and end dates. I'm looking at how I'm recognizing revenue based on this project. When I click on my task tab here, I can see the multiple sites. So this is just a basic project where I'm doing a deployment across multiple sites. So site 130, 135. I can create an unlimited quantity of tasks. In fact, we can also create an unlimited quantity of subtasks. So if part of 130 is I'm going to install a module, and the other one I'm going to be testing a module, the other one I'll be doing servicing or surveying of it, I can add all these different subtasks as part of the project. The key
Can you add that now? Can you add that now so I can see how you do it?
Sure. So this would be a manual method of creating tasks. I'll just create a third task right now, call it task number 3. Sprint 140 surveying. I can also add, if I'm doing perhaps servicing of a module at a time, provide that service against that particular asset too if I like. But that's really all the
Okay, so
detail
I just
you need
noticed.
to go
I just noticed you do something there. So go back into that screen where you had your pull downs for what your service was going to be for that object.
Okay.
And you knew I was going to jump in eventually, Charles.
I was hoping so, Walt.
I can't help it. All right, so I see a list of tasks. Can you scroll to the right? Do those tasks have monetary value?
Oh, sure. What you're looking at here, well, these aren't tasks. These are items. So this would be if you actually have pieces of equipment that you're servicing. So like this would be like an Avaya phone system, for example. That's what this particular item is.
Okay.
This isn't a task list. This is
Okay.
just a part.
So that still might answer what I need. So let's suppose we're going to take. All right, close that down. So let's go to site Sprint site 130. All right, and that we're going to call that a particular site that has a dedicated purchase order, a PO, for that site. Internal to that site itself, suppose we have 5 tasks that we have to do, and of those 5 tasks, we have already predetermined because of the PO value. We call those tasks line items internal to, let's just use Ericsson because that's really where we're going to have the most diversity and the most challenges on something like this. So Sprint Site 130, we have 5 what we call line items that are associated with that site itself. Those are tasks that have to be performed on that particular site that are all tied to one PO. We may do all 5 at one time. We may do 3 or 4 at one time. If those are given to us and we have to data fill those for that specific site and put them into this program, how would we add subtasks to that particular Sprint 130 per se?
Well, I hear a 2-part question, which would be, because you're also throwing in the purchase order. So my guess is that there's probably a good chance that you'd have functionality that says do not exceed a certain purchase order amount when it comes to billing. What I might recommend is, well, first of all, in order to create subtasks, the best thing to do would be to take our task number and do like a 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 method and just say, you know, our subtask would be perhaps 1,100. So I might have Sprint 130 is task number 1,000. Everything that starts with the number 1 will be part of task number 1. Now, the best way of filtering that data is using another tool here on the project. But if you're going to talk about that kind of engagement where you have those 5 sites, what you might choose to do is create a child project specific to that individual site, because that's where.
Okay. Well, every one of our sites are going to have that. So I mean, we get one PO, and in that PO we have 5, 6, 10 items possibly. So I mean, every one of ours are going to be like this on Ericsson.
Okay. Well, a couple things to note. You could also use like a templating function so that if you do have to create multiple projects, or if you have that single purchase order across 5 to 10 of these different sites that all have a series of subtasks, are most of the tasks the same for every one of the projects? Like
So like in other words, it would depend. It would depend. I mean, but yeah, most of the time they're going to be consistent for a project. So we would get what's called, let's just say the LTE work. We would get the LTE integration, call testing, NEA testing, and a BBU test. Those are all 4 separate line items that we get, that we had to quote to Ericsson, that they pay us individually on each specific, kind of a la carte, if that makes sense.
Okay, sure. what we would do in this kind of scenario, if we don't already have a project on the go, if we need to generate a new project, it would be a matter of going to our project form, creating a new project, specifying here it's Ericsson, who is it that we're billing. We're not so much interested in the deliverable site because it sounds like it's being delivered across multiple sites as part of this project. I'll specify that unique purchase order for this engagement, and I'll create that series of tasks. Now, you might say that Ericsson has multiple projects like this on the go. What we would do then is either one of two things. Number one, I can generate a template so that I can generate the same task list across multiple projects. In fact, I can take all the details of this project and generate them as part of a template so that I'm not rekeying in the same data over and over again. And the second thing I could also do
that's good.
I could generate the same project, and we also have a copy-paste function. So instead of going through the whole templating structure and generating my template on my project, I can just simply build out one very complicated project and just copy that as many times as I need. Now, as you have these a la carte items that you mentioned, I just simply go back to my task list, either generate that new task, type in whatever details I need, or perhaps I'll take my Sprint 130 and make any changes to it as I wish.
Can you just demo that? I mean, choose one way or the other to that you think best reflects, because this is a real critical aspect. I would think you'd want that wallet.
Sure.
Sorry, I was talking to mute. Yeah, that would be great to see. I mean, even if he just adds one subtask, that'd be perfect.
Right, right, yeah.
So that one, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for the purpose of time, I'd like to show you an example versus go through all the steps of generating a project. So if I go now to my Net app, I know it's a very complex project. So I have these two projects. One was a very complicated one with a number of tasks on it. Okay, so this is breaking down my subtask. What this particular business does is they break it out by the 100 type of breakdown. So anything specifying the number 1 is task number 1. So project management is a task. Planning is another task. And what we do is we use this kind of project cost analysis detail where I can break it out either at the labor or at the cost code level to specify how we're doing on the project, or I can run a report that will group every one of these particular tasks so I can see not only how we're doing here on initialization, but how we're doing on all 3 of these tasks because they're grouped. But this would be an example of a project that's got 27 lines and maybe what appears to be 5, maybe 6 actual category tasks. And I can also see any of my notes appended to these tasks. I can see what type of service it is. So these are time and materials engagements. I can see dates as to when they need to be delivered. And if I go to my next page here, I can see that I've got 4 tasks with approximately 22 or 23 subtasks.
Okay.
Yeah. So that would that's pretty good. And I guess what would be make me feel a little bit better is in 2014 I know of at least 3 projects in which we're going to have probably between 400 and 800 POs, and of those POs we're going to have 4 to 5 tasks involved to do that work. So suppose we get this and it comes to us in an Excel spreadsheet. So with the data fill for that amount of work for this is just one project, how time-consuming is it to load something of that size, and can it be loaded via a predetermined template from a spreadsheet?
In fact, that really is the way to do spreadsheet imports. This is really unanimous across multiple software platforms, not just mine, is we would provide you with a template. So what you might do is your customer might provide you with a template that is or is not in a format that can be implemented or imported into Alert software. So what we would do is just export this into Excel so you have the, in fact, we can do that just to show you a working example. And you would take all of your data and put it into this template. And when you import it, depending on how much detail you have, it's pretty instantaneous as to how it gets into the system. So if you need to import...
Boy, I will say that is a good, I mean, that's a good selling point for me as far as I'm concerned. And Charles has got to be laughing right now because that's huge, and I think Warren would agree with me here.
I mean, even this is a very basic example. I've only got 28 lines here. It's just pulling whatever details here on our project. So if it's just importing from Excel, I mean, that's not a difficult endeavor. Maybe I'm biting off more than I can chew or being a little too ambitious here, but even importing, if I can find a way to make you not even have to import a project, that would be a bonus. But if your customer is providing you with data that needs to get in the system, this is really the best method of doing so. I'll give you a template. In fact,
well,
I can do it. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and I mean, that's how we get all of our assignments from Ericsson. They come via Excel spreadsheet. I mean, that's how we get our dump from their system. So they put everything in their system. I mean, they kind of tell us what to do their way, and we have to take their way and make it work for our system. I mean, I'm hoping that, you know, if Donna's already familiar with it, and I guess Luke's probably, you know, I don't know, but on the Excel side, that really is beneficial to us to have the ability to take a predetermined template that Ericsson gives us, use that and flip it and put it into our system and then run our program from that without having to do it not only in Excel but in a system. In one system works best for me.
I think one of the keys that I'd just like to throw out as well is perhaps Ericsson gives you that you know, that spreadsheet of the work that needs to be done. And let's take the example that perhaps for your case, that same Excel sheet needs to happen across maybe 15 or 20 projects, where you're going to be, in your case, you'd have to upload this template perhaps 15 to 20 times if you want to separate each one of the projects. What you might choose to do in this example is you can certainly import that Excel sheet, populate it onto a project, and make it as, you know, bring over as much detail as you can. And perhaps when you generate that first project, now you can use our copy-paste feature, so you don't even have to upload that project multiple times. You just upload it once, and then you can copy-paste the project 15 times, which is certainly a lot less time-consuming.
Well, there's going to be unique things about each site.
Right.
So including, you know, the site ID, site address, yada, yada, yada. And then the tasks that are specific to that site. And in the way that we've got our systems currently set up, you know, we have a job number and then we have a site extra. That is the definition of what a complete job number is for us. So,
Right.
So you're saying that we could take that information and just do a data dump into the system and populate your system with that.
You can. It's certainly not required. It's a nice feature that I know some of our customers do use. It's a copy-paste function. In fact, if most of the projects are mostly similar with just a couple of small changes, it might be simpler just to copy-paste a project a number of times and then revisit the project and make the small changes. But, I mean, there are multiple methods of getting all these projects in. That's just, of course, one of the many examples.
Walt, are you stunned into silence?
No, he likes it.
That would be even nicer if Ericsson
No, I mean,
still
listen,
out
look, hey. Yeah, well, good luck on that. If you can get them to do that, I'll send you a huge bonus. But, yeah, I mean, you know, especially since I was told not 2 hours ago that they don't know, someone doesn't know of anyone that can upload it from whatever, which disqualifies.
Different response, isn't it?
Yeah, and so that's good. I mean, you know, but I guess the $1,000,000 question for me is the next one, which comes to of those specific tasks that we put underneath a site, those 5 line items or whatever. How easily manageable is a change order so that my PM can say, okay, 800 sites, we've done 200 flawlessly, we've got 20 or so sitting out there that have something that still require work to be done, and I need to track it. I need to see, when it's done, can I go and schedule my guy on one task to go get it done, and without fumbling through a bunch of stuff and having it, because again, most PMs work out of a spreadsheet, and they can make that spreadsheet hum. Is the ability internal to this system such that they can also go in here and determine, all right, here's what my delta is on these 20 sites. There's change orders involved with those 20 sites. How do I bill it? How do I track it? I mean, that's kind of the day-to-day operational type stuff PMs are looking for, in my opinion.
Okay, so it sounds. Sorry, go ahead.
Let me take that one step further, and from the kind of the PM level as well. The information that you just gathered from an Excel spreadsheet and loaded very easily into the system, the ease of being able to take all of the specifics per site, kind of with what Walter was speaking to just then. If you have 20 sites that have change orders associated with them, being able to easily extract that information kind of in reverse of what you just did here, and pulling all of that information out into a spreadsheet to export to the customer. So if I have, for examples, on some of our work, we do have multiple sites. We may hit upwards of 50 to 60 sites a week. And if we have 50 to 60 sites that have specific change orders associated with them, we have to put those together in a specific format, which can vary between which customer you use inside of Ericsson, but we may have to take the information from those sites, compile them into a Excel format, and provide to the customer for review once a week. So is the export functionality as easy to use as what you just did on the import functionality?
Absolutely. I mean, the functionality is virtually identical. I either take my spreadsheet and I import it using that import tool, or I really go to any of my forms here, be it a project, a work order, a contract, whatever it may be, and I can just export whatever detail directly via Excel as well. So if it's even just exporting all the change orders pertaining to this particular project, here I don't have any, unfortunately, but I could click on my download to Excel and send that right out to my customer. Now, better yet, what if I sent them?
So the change order. So the change orders, you can use that toolbar there for the change orders. Will be identifiable based on the project and not to where you have to dive down into the site level to find them.
What you're looking at here is I'm logged into one of my projects. This is my tower services project with McDonald's. And if I look at my change orders tab, this is across all the change orders pertaining to this project. So if you have this project which has these 2 sites, this would be showing all the change orders based on those 2 sites. In your case, if you have a more complex project that has multiple sites, this will display all the change orders by that particular purchase order. Okay, because each project in nature, each project in most cases is one purchase order number, or perhaps multiple projects are one purchase order. So I can see all these change orders, or I can also go to a global level and just back out of my projects altogether and say, show me all of my change orders across all of my projects. So this is another method of any project manager saying, I don't care about each individual project. Show me all of my projects by their status so I can see which ones are still waiting approval. So for example, here a list of all of my entered change orders which haven't yet been approved.
Now, see, I like that functionality right there, because some of the other things that we've sat on and looked at, the change orders weren't compiled in one area. You had to dive down into the site level and then try to pull them out. So the fact that you have a change order that's associated or assigned as a change order at the project level to where you can pull them out on the project level and kind of sort them by, you know, date or week. That functionality is kind of nice. I like that.
Excellent. Now, don't forget that I'm just showing you an example here as well. You'll notice I don't have any tabs along the top, kind of like I did with my work orders we saw. I can create all sorts of tabs that'll say, show me all of my, you know, all my change orders that are based on Ericsson. Show me all my Ericsson change orders in a view here. Or perhaps I can display change orders at my, my project portal level. So here, instead of showing my employee workloads and my project by status, I can also say, show me all of those that are all my projects that require change orders to be approved. So like here are 3 projects that are still in the estimate phase. If I click on it, well, it appears I've got, oh, I clicked on my wrong one here. I've got 2. I can drill right down to that detail as well. So it might make sense to even display some of that detail via dashboard, because now you can display just the details you like to see, and I can do a lot of jumping around in the system just from one screen. In fact, I can also generate reports right from my portal as well. Again, just throwing out ideas.
Okay, another question. For each individual task, can you invoice the individual task and keep track of it?
Absolutely. It's with the tasks, you can either put time against a project or a task. So whenever your resources are working on a project, they're not really working on the project per se, tower services. They're working on one of the sites. Or if you have subtasks, they're working on one of the subtasks, which then roll up to the project. So when you're doing your billing, you would bill for each one of these, either at the whole project level or you could bill at the task level, whatever you prefer. And the way that's done is we use a triggering mechanism. So when you have these agreements with your customers, of course, you've negotiated some method as to how this project's going to be billed across multiple sites. We use a trigger mechanism, so I can say bill for a particular task when it's marked complete. So when all the work is done at site 135, please generate an invoice for you know, the whole project, or perhaps do 50% completion billing on that particular site. That's all managed using this area called triggers. And I'll just specify what all my triggers are for all of my sites across this project. Now it's just a matter of running periodic billing cycles, and the system will automatically pick up that invoice when it's time to be emailed to the customer. So while we're here on the billing topic, just to speak as to the kinds of billing scenarios that the alert software encompasses. I mean, I'm going to assume I've probably got more than enough functionality you'd require here, but we support all sorts of methods of billing on projects, be it either time and materials-based work. If you're doing fixed amount billing, we also support deposits, holdbacks, progress billing, milestone billing, and here we've got our date-based billing, and I can specify what the interval is. So if you're doing weekly, daily, monthly, semi-monthly, bi-weekly, whatever it might be. But this is, of course, important because the whole
And
concept
Charles,
of
this is fully integratable with Timber.
Well, that's one of the issues. It's not as fully integrated as some of the other solutions that we've looked at. You know, it'd have to be a custom integration in order to perform that. But you know, the Timberline can write to a SQL database, and they can read from an SQL database. So,
yeah, Charles, you're absolutely right.
Easier to build our data that we could then port over into CRM for the Timberline side of things. That would be good.
yeah, it's going to be you know, the integration is going to be our issue with this one. But again, they have that capability to do that, and certainly Timberline does not have a real nice clean integration either, but they do have a pretty decent SQL. So,
well, and in any of the ODBC writables, they would be able to push information to it as well.
right.
So I think it'll have as much integration as anything else has.
Okay, great comment.
Cool.
And Brad's the one that that first basically keyed me up that this could be done, because I was concerned about that from the get-go. But Brad's been the one that's saying don't worry about it.
You've probably already seen it as part of my demo. If you recall, when I was setting up that original work order, I was getting a note that says, warning, this customer is on hold.
Yeah.
We have an integration with out of the box. We have with two solutions. We integrate very nicely with Microsoft Dynamics GP, if anyone in the group is familiar with that product. We also have an integration out of the box with QuickBooks, but we don't unfortunately have one with the Sage products. We've done them before. Like, we've done an integration with a very large account that uses Sage's Mass 500 product, which I know is written in SQL. It's a lot of work, but it's entirely possible. But Charles, you are right. We don't have an out-of-the-box integration today. It is written in SQL. We can do integrations. It's just be a matter of scoping out exactly what the labor effort would be.
Okay.
Now, mind you, I could always export to Excel, and you can import like an XML file, which is it's not as pretty, but it's that's certainly an option. That's obviously very inexpensive.
Yeah. And Walt, you picked up immediately. They're a Microsoft shop, and that's the reason you've got all the Excel integrations that you didn't have on the other product.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, I would definitely say that the vast majority of our customers that are really using all the functionality and taking advantage of like the integrations, they're also typically Microsoft shops that have either Microsoft GP or perhaps they're using Intuit's QuickBooks product. But we are Microsoft partners, so we've our software is very tightly integrates with all the Office suites, including Outlook.
Yeah. Can you go back and just show us on your dispatch board some resource allocation on that and some of the capabilities that you've got? Because I know that's really the last time around one of the things that really differentiated you was some of the things that you could do on a resource allocation.
Sure. Is there something in particular you've got in mind?
Well, just subcontractors, and I'm curious. I mean, you can issue when you give a job to a subcontractor. I'm assuming the way you're set up, you probably issue work orders. You don't issue POs to subcontractors. Is that right, or do you have an integrated PO system also?
It's what you're really allocating and scheduling to them are either projects, project tasks, or work orders. It's not so much send a PO. I mean, we could configure the system for you to act in that manner and almost make a project instead of a project. Instead, that project is a PO. It's something we can do. But what you're typically doing is assigning those tasks to resources. You might have one of the tasks goes to a subcontractor that's skilled in doing, Ericsson hardware, where another one is more skilled in doing like site surveying, and another sub that's there for just, workplace safety. So what we do in that sense is we send the tasks to the resource versus sending the whole purchase order. Now at the scheduling level, I'll make sure to show you our Gantt chart here as well. We've got all sorts of filtering capabilities. So you notice down below I'm showing all of my work orders. We do also display projects, so I can go and take a look at our that sprint project we create. We don't have any tasks on this one. I'll find one that does have some tasks. Okay, and I can dispatch each of these technicians or each one of these tasks to all sorts of subcontractors across various skill sets. Going back to our employee list, if we're slicing and dicing our, the grouping of our subcontractors, I can group them based on skill set, by territory. I can see availability. I'm assigning them to the project as well. So if I go back to that job, it'll show me all those resources that have been allocated to that project, and I can see who's available and who's not. I can also do a little bit of forward forecasting to see who's going to be available for projects and who's not. I'm going to jump now over 2 hours. Sorry, go ahead.
Does it also track a history of who worked on a project? I mean, obviously, I'm sure that's probably a functionality, but.
Oh, absolutely. If I just go back to my project and take a look and go to my labor tab, at any given time, I can see all the details that have happened against the project. And it'll not only date and timestamp who dispatched, but it'll also date and timestamp any resources, time, or labor, or parts or materials that are entered. So at any given time, I can go back really to any work order or project and see all the work that's been provided. So here, Hill N entered some time for 3 hours and 30 minutes on the 2nd at 9 o'clock and wrote some notes. Okay, so I'll also show you another method for scheduling. This is especially common for actually businesses like yours that have lots and lots and lots of subcontractors. As you could probably appreciate with an Outlook-style scheduler that we just saw, it's a little bit more difficult to see multiple resources and what all their availability is on one screen. So this is another option where I can see a much larger list by day. So if I'm scheduling, say, a week from now, I can see all my resources availability from one screen. I can go down below here and see a list of all of my projects. I can expand my project, see a series of those tasks. I can also add additional fields if I like to show the status. So if one of them is going behind schedule and perhaps I estimated my end date to be Monday, but it's now Friday, I can also make sure to specify that these ones are being, they're exceeding our estimates, for example. Now it's another same method of scheduling where I just drag and drop my tasks here onto my Gantt chart, and it's yet another method of scheduling our subcontractors and our technicians. In fact, I can also do all of my filtering here via Gantt chart. So I can say, show me all of those that are contractors, or perhaps all my contractors who are skilled in, say, Cisco systems, or perhaps some of your techs are skilled in doing surgery. I can filter by those resources, see their availability, and plan them against my projects accordingly.
Yeah, guys, their capability of doing that filtering by skill sets was, again, something that really set them apart from everybody else. And you can see, this was really set up for companies like Donna that have a requirement for various skill sets across the country. But, it would still apply to us when where we have certification requirements and things like that, so you could keep track of what technicians had what certifications, et cetera, in here.
In fact, when we're taking a look at all of our resources in the system, we can manage all their skill sets. So looking at Gloria, I can provide all of her details. I know what her role is. I know her job role. I can specify her timesheet period if it's weekly, monthly, that kind of thing. But I can also manage her skills on here as well. So if we have certifications, I can enhance this a little bit further so I can manage things like certifications. So if one of her certifications is about to expire, we can again create workflows that'll make sure that the organization is notified that she needs to be recertified for some particular skill. And we also support teams and crews. So if you have a group of resources, or perhaps one of your subcontractors has a team of staff that are going to be working on a job, we do support teams and crews so that you can dispatch one group, which will actually dispatch multiple people at once. Okay, so I'm running into my final moments here. The only piece I haven't really spoken about yet is billing. Billing is certainly, a lot of the time, it can be a complex topic of all the multiple methods of billing, how we can make sure all of our projects are being billed. In our case, billing is actually one of the easiest parts of the software. If I want to provide all of my project billing or all of my work order billing, I can bill them one by one, or I can just run a batch and say, let's go ahead and invoice all of our work orders all the way up until today. It'll generate my batch. I can see I've got one here that's for $1,500, another that's for $2,100, so I can open up the details of this particular batch for Aaron Fitz Electrical. I can see a line item detail of all the work that's going to be invoiced. I can click on my print button here, for example, to see what the draft invoice will look like. Okay, so of course, again, this is just a sample. You can create this to look any way you like. You'll notice it hasn't yet been posted. This is just a sample of what we are going to send the customer. And I can make any changes to this. I can add any discounts and certainly just recalculate the batch if I need to. I can delete any of these invoices if I don't want to send them yet. I'd rather send them as part of the next batch. And when I'm happy with it, I'll just go ahead and approve my batch, post it. I'll provide the invoice perhaps for Monday because I'll go ahead and send that invoice out to all my customers on Monday. Save it. And it's at this point that I'd love to say I could click on my export button and send it to Timberline, but it's typically at this point that I send it over to QuickBooks or GP. Otherwise, what we can do is create perhaps an export button that'll provide all these details onto an Excel sheet that perhaps you can import into Timberline, at least for the short term. But now that I've posted these invoices, I can even create an email invoices button here for you and create, oh, of course, I haven't set up my customers to do that. But if you have some of your customers like Ericsson, you like to automatically email the customer, you can click on an email invoices button. It'll automatically PDF every invoice, and it'll send a predefined message to whoever the bill to contact is for each of those customers.
Okay,
So that's billing.
Okay, one final thing. Technicians out at the job site needs to collect pictures, needs to fill out a form. Do you have electronic forms in the system that he would fill out, and do you have the ability to easily capture pictures and add to the work order?
Okay, so you can do both. You can append pictures as an attachment to a work order or a project or a task or a change order. You can really add pictures really at, or any documents rather, at any level. However, on the topic of forms, we do support the concept of just filling out forms on mobile devices. If they're filling out a form, are they using a smartphone or are they using like a tablet or a laptop?
Yes, both.
Okay. I can enable forms. As you saw from my, in fact, if I go back to it for a moment, okay, they can fill out a form and have that append back to the work order. If it's the timesheet detail or if it's another type of form that's just like a checklist or something. We don't support a whole lot of that on mobile today. I could add another form that they could fill out and append to the work order. It's entirely possible. We tend to shy away from that, at least at the smartphone level, because it's just they're filling out lots of detail. I'd love it if they're using a tablet or a laptop.
Okay.
But it is possible. If they're using a tablet or a laptop, it's absolutely possible. But with smartphones, it's not out of the box.
Okay. The question is a form something that we can create because we have different requirements on each job, of the things that we have to capture for that job. So can we create that, or does that have to come from you?
You can create it. In fact, we can show you how you create those forms. We also have a checklist function which maybe applies for you. You could say if it's doing a tower servicing job, please append this type of checklist, and it'll just be a regular form they can fill out either using text or check boxes, whatever it could be. That currently isn't supported on smartphones aside from just entering time and notes.
Okay.
But if they're using a tablet or a laptop, they can. Okay. On the topic of appending pictures, it's possible. Right now, with our smartphone application, we don't have like a simple button where where I can just take a picture and it's click here to append that picture to the work order. Right now, the functionality is really that I have to go into my work order, go to my attachments tab, click on my multiple upload, and then go ahead and select my files that I'd like to append to that particular job or work order. As it stands today, we don't have a function where I can append them via smartphone, but I'm really hoping that our next version next year will support something closer to that.
Okay.
What I have seen some of our customers do is if you're taking pictures on a smartphone, especially something like an iPhone, where all your pictures can go onto like that mobile cloud or whatever that photo sharing service is for iOS. If I then go back onto a tablet or a laptop, I can retrieve a folder of all those pictures I took on my smartphone. And if I'm using a device, say, like a laptop, I can then go back and select those files from that shared folder and append it all to the work order. And hopefully it's not pictures of hydrangeas and deserts.
Okay. That was fast.
It's we chose SQL for a reason. The system is lightning fast. In fact, this system you're looking at here, it's not one that's sitting on my server. It's these are cloud-based systems, so it's the system operates very quickly.
Okay, and where do you host your cloud-based system?
We have a hosting partner that hosts the data. It's actually one of the largest Microsoft partners in the world. They host data in 3 different locations. They're primarily based out of Tampa, I think, is the primary data center. They've also got another in Atlanta and a third one for backup in, I think it's in Louisville, Kentucky. It's somewhere in Kentucky.
Okay, and is the data mirrored in those other locations, or how is that handled?
Oh, absolutely. It's the whole business of theirs is hosting. Our business is service management software. Theirs is hosting.
Okay.
They've got the 4 points redundancy, so it's 99.99% uptime. And they do what's called N+1 redundancy. I'll be honest with saying I'm not even entirely sure what that means, but it's always being mirrored and pushed between multiple data centers. So if one of their data centers caught fire, it's already backed up to another one of the locations, and they do backups frequently. So it's not even like a once a week. It's multiple times a day, I believe.
Okay. Okay, guys, we're up to our allocated time. Anybody else have any questions? Come on, Walt. No? Donna? Okay, well, I guess either everybody's gone or nobody has any questions. Okay.
Could be the Friday afternoon sleepy. So.
Yeah. You were saying, Donna?
I said I do not have any questions.
Okay, was it like you remembered it?
I could do a test on it, yes.
Okay.
Not today.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Greg.
All right, take care now. Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks for your time, everyone. I really do appreciate it, and have a great weekend.
Greg, thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Hey, my pleasure. Take care.